So, good evening to everybody, to people who are from this part of the world, and good morning and afternoon to other friends and colleagues who have joined from other side of the world. Welcome to the webinar on COVID-19 and informal economy moving from relief to recovery. My name is Shalini Sinha. I'm from Vigo, and I'm joined by my two colleagues, Avi Majitia and Malvika Narayan, and we welcome you to this webinar. There are nearly 5 million informal workers in Delhi. These informal workers feed the economic engine of the city, and yet their contribution remains unrecognized. They remain missing from the imagination of the city and are constantly excluded and penalized. The pandemic has, if anything else, has definitely revealed the depths of workers' exclusion and the marginalization that they face. So today, this is the topic of our discussion. Today, we will be presenting from the study that Vigo has conducted and also be reflecting on the way forward. So let me just straight away go to our impressive and diverse panelists, and let me begin by welcoming Jagriti Devi and Praveen Kumar. खास स्वागत है जागृति देवी का और प्रवीण जी का जो हमारे साथ आज जुड़े हैं. We are very grateful to Mirai Ben for finding the time to chair this session. Mirai Ben is the chair of Vigo board. She's also from SEWA. We are also very grateful to Professor Amit Basole from Azim Premji University, who's a special guest. Very welcome to you, Professor Basole. Also joining us today are our partners in Delhi who helped us conduct this study, Mr. Arvind Unni from Indo Global Social Services Society, IDSSS, Ms. Aditi Yagnik and Ms. Namita Malik from SEWA Delhi, and Mr. Dharmendra Kumar representing Jan Pahel and Hawkers Joint Action Committee. So Mirai Ben, over to you.
Thank you very much, Shalini Ben, and warm welcome to all. I think we'll go straight in. And the first part of our agenda are key study findings, which will be presented by Avi and Malavika, who are part, as you know, of the Vigo Focal Cities Delhi team. Sorry.
Thank you, Mirai Ben.
Is my screen visible? Yeah.
Yes, Malvika, it's visible.
All right, thanks. So we'll start. Welcome,
Malvika, can you put it in the PowerPoint mode, please?
Change my name.
All right, we'll start. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Like Mirai Ben mentioned, my colleague Malvika and I will be presenting some of the key findings that have emerged in Delhi from Vigo's COVID-19 crisis and the informal economy study. This study is an attempt, Malvika, next slide please. The study is an attempt to look at the impact of the crisis on the livelihoods of informal workers in 12 cities across the globe. We have cities both in the global north and south, from North America, Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. In Delhi, we partnered with SEWA Delhi, Jan Pahel, and the Delhi Roundtable on Solid Waste Management to coordinate the study. Malvika, next slide, please. So the study is longitudinal to assess the impact of COVID-19 over a period of time. Today, we are presenting the results from round 1, which looked at 2 time periods. The peak of lockdown, which in Delhi was April, and June, July, which was the early phase of reopening. And we compared this to the pre-crisis levels of February 2020. And round 2 of the study will be happening in the first half of 2021. In Delhi, we interviewed 270 informal workers belonging to the 4 sectors that WIGO normally works with, that is domestic workers, home-based workers, street vendors, and waste pickers. And the surveys were conducted through phone interviews, and we also held semi-structured interviews with workers and worker leaders. So the study is aimed at capturing the impact on livelihood, that's work and income, hunger and well-being, care burden and household responsibilities, relief measures, as well as the coping mechanisms employed by the workers. Malvika, next slide, please. So in Delhi, what the study is showing us is that while the risks of the disease are shared, the costs which the most vulnerable have had to bear during this period weigh the heaviest. So at the peak of lockdown, what we saw is that more than 80% of the surveyed informal workers did not find even a single day's worth of work. And by July, only around 50% were able to resume work. In fact, in terms of future recovery, support to resume livelihoods emerged as overwhelmingly the most common response in all the sectors surveyed. This includes both the necessary permissions to work without harassment and access to opportunities and capital, which would allow them to do so. Malvika, next slide, please. Thank you. So what we are seeing is that the crisis has had a multi-layered impact on workers. Our study shows that there were different pathways of impact on work and income for the different sectors. For home-based workers and street vendors, for example, disruptions in supply chains contributed to loss of work. So there was no access to wholesale markets or vendor markets for street vendors. There was no access to supplies, and there were a lack of work orders for home-based workers. For domestic workers, employer attitudes and hiring practices contributed to the near complete loss of work that they saw in April. And for waste pickers, closure of dumps and scrap dealerships, plus the decreased demand and lower prices for the sale of recyclables, led to loss of work and income. Even by July, in the early phases of reopening, the pathways to recovery were varied. So while employment had picked up, the number of days worked and the average earnings remained far lower than pre-crisis levels of February 2020. Additionally, there was an overall increase in household responsibilities, including care burden, childcare due to schools and daycare centers remaining closed despite parents being able to resume work, and also with a complete depletion of savings and increased borrowings during this period, workers saw their debt burden go up. So what we're seeing unfolding is a crisis for the city's informal workers. So it's not just harsh and ongoing, it's multi-layered, with the livelihood loss combined with the health crisis and the care crisis, where the women are suffering more than men. So I'd now like to invite Malvika to present the nuanced findings of some of the key issues that we've mentioned. Thank you.
Thanks, Avi. So what I'll be trying to do is to just quickly go through some of the specific key findings that we found for Delhi, and also trying to give a picture of how Delhi compares to the other cities globally, and also point to some of the sectoral trends wherever it's possible. So of course, the first major impact was the complete stop to livelihoods once the lockdowns were announced in March 2020. We see that the 3 Indian cities in the study, along with Lima, Peru, actually saw the most harsh lockdowns, and so there was almost a complete stop to work in these cities. And I would also like to remind that, just like Avi said, the bar that we had set when we were asking workers whether they were able to work was actually very low. The question was whether they had found even a single days of work in the previous month. So these numbers are quite drastic, as you can see. In Delhi, the loss of work for domestic workers was the most compared to any other city, with only 1% being able to work in April. Street vendors in Delhi also fared below 8 other cities in terms of loss of work in April. Their recovery in June was lower than in all other cities except 2. A section of waste pickers and home-based workers were able to work in April, as you can see from the graph. This was because waste pickers household waste collection services in many parts of the city, and home-based workers in our survey were associated with Seva, who was able to procure mask making work for home-based workers during this period. But what we see is that during the unlock period, the ability to work for home-based workers actually falls even further. The proportion of waste pickers in Delhi who are able to work is also lower than in most other cities. There is also a gender disparity within the sectors. So, for example, while only 50% of female waste pickers are able to resume work in June, around 86% of male waste pickers are able to resume work in the June-July period. Quickly moving on is, of course, the other second major impact from loss of work is the loss of earnings. And we see that there is a drastic fall in earnings across all cities, across all sectors. In half of the cities, including Delhi, workers in April were earning less than 20% of their pre-crisis earning, which was what they were earning in February of 2020. Again, we see that domestic workers in Delhi were the worst affected and reported earning lower proportion of their pre-crisis income than in any other city. For home-based workers who were the lowest earning sector even pre-crisis, their earnings have fallen to a minimal. Around 82% are earning less than half what they were earning before the crisis, even in the June-July period. The sharpest fall in earnings is seen for street vendors, and there is very poor recovery. The proportion of street vendors in Delhi who were earning, even in June, less than half of what they were before the crisis is higher than in all other cities except for two. Even while some waste pickers are able to resume work, their earnings do not recover at all. 98% said that the price of recyclables had decreased, again a higher proportion than we see in many other cities. Moving on to some of the associated problems. One was, of course, the crisis of hunger, which became evident very quickly once the lockdown had been announced. Even in our sample, more than a third of workers actually reported that they had faced food insecurity and had difficulty in providing food for their families. And this was especially high for the waste picker sector, with around 57% of waste pickers in Delhi saying that they had faced food insecurity, and around 10% said that this was a very frequent occurrence. Along with that, like we had also mentioned, the other thing that we see workers reporting throughout is a rise in the care responsibilities. And here again, women workers reported higher increases in childcare, elderly care, cleaning, cooking, and every other care responsibility. Next, if we look at some of the coping measures which informal workers had to take up in order to tide over the crisis, we see that borrowing money and taking on debt was the most common response in most of the cities, including Delhi. We noted that while many borrowed from family and friends, others mentioned money lenders and other informal financial institutions, which are often quite exploitative. In terms of sectoral differences, most street vendors relied on their savings than in the women-dominated sectors of domestic work and home-based work, probably because these were very low-earning sectors where women did not have much of savings to fall back on. In these sectors, we also see that some women workers also looked for alternative employment in order to tide over the crisis. Next, coming to access to relief. The COVID-19 crisis pushed governments across the world to announce various cash and food relief measures, but we see that many vulnerable workers in the informal economy were not able to avail of these. We see that access to food relief was relatively high in Indian cities compared to other cities globally. And we also note that there's a huge role that partner organizations have played in this by connecting workers to government relief sources. Also in Delhi, as well as a few other cities, we see that there might have been some spatial targeting of relief measures. because workers who were living in informal settlements were more likely to receive food and cash relief, food relief rather than those who were living outside of informal settlements, even when the need was, of course, felt by informal workers everywhere. Again, we also found that migrant workers were often unable to access food relief because of the ration cards being registered elsewhere, and they were also less likely to report having received cash transfers. Now, for coming to the figures for Delhi, 32% of the workers in Delhi reported receiving cash transfers, slightly higher for the women-dominated sectors of home-based work and domestic work. And 73% of respondents received food assistance from the government. The last sort of figure that we are also wanting to show you is that 93% of the surveyed workers said that they also received food relief support from their own membership-based organizations and other NGOs. This really shows the huge role that was played by civil society during the crisis, and we hope that we can learn some lessons in terms of delivery of social protection from this crisis moving forward. I will end here, and we hope that we will be able to collectively reflect on a roadmap for recovery in the coming sessions. And I request Shalini to please take us forward.
Thank you very much, Avi and Malvika. And may I now request Shalini Ben to take us forward in the session on reflections, please.
Thank you, Mirai Ben. Before I switch language channels, I want to tell everybody that you have to choose a language. And this meeting is being conducted both in English and Hindi. Simultaneous translations are available. So please, at the bottom of your screen, there is translation option there, and you could go for that. And I'm now moving to the section on reflections, and I will be talking to our two guests, Jagriti Devi, who's a waste picker, and Praveen Kumar, who's a street vendor from Delhi. Jagriti ji, आपको मेरी आवाज सुनाई दे रही है?
Jagriti Devi, can you hear me?
हाँ, तो जागृति जी, मैं आपसे पूछना चाह रही थी कि जब हमने पिछली बार बात करी थी,
Jagriti Devi, I just wanted to ask you that when we last spoke to you in June, July during the study, you told us that earlier you used to work as a waste sorter. And then when lockdown began, your income fell to such levels that you had to pick up 2 more forms of work. Is that true? Jagriti Devi?
हाँ, आपकी आवाज
Yes, we can hear you.
आप बताइए हमें. हाँ, बोलिए.
कबाड़ा नहीं बिक रहा था
जब
लॉकडाउन
When we were not getting dry waste during lockdown, the waste that we sort and keep, we were not able to sell it. So we were wondering what work should we do. So one way was to sell vegetables, because people were trying to sell vegetables, which was allowed. So it would be a way to earn a little money and feed our family. And they would only allow us to vend from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. If we went even 2 minutes above it, they would upend our carts. We used to go at 1 a.m. in the morning to go get vegetables from the wholesale market. And we used to get beaten every day. We had bruises on our arms and legs. And right now, today, the work that you're doing is sorting waste and also to sell vegetables in the evening. And is there any other work that you do? Yes, at 7 a.m. I go to work in homes as a domestic worker. Just a minute. So you begin at 7 in the morning, perhaps beginning your own household work before that. And at 7 in the morning, you go to work as a domestic worker in different homes.
जिस घर में काम करते उसी के प्लॉट में रहते, तो जब किराए देने के लिए पैसा नहीं था तो हम उनसे बात करें कि भैया कोई काम होगा तो दीजिए, तो उन्होंने बोला कि हमारे
Sorry, just a second. If people in the chat can indicate if they can hear the translation.
खर्चा के लिए ले लीजिएगा, तो ऐसे करके अभी
तो
उसी के घर में
अभी भी काम कर रहे हैं।
Thank you.
अभी भी
So are you
काम
still
कर रहे
working as a
हैं। तो
domestic
जब
worker?
आपके पास
Yes.
पैसे नहीं थे किराए देने के लिए तो मकान मालिक के यहाँ काम
So when you
करते
didn't
थे,
have any
तो
money
आपको
to
वहाँ
give
से
rent,
किराए का पैसा कट जाता
so
था,
you used
है
to
ना?
work
अच्छा,
in the
तो
house of the
7 बजे
landlord
जाते
and
होंगे
deduct
घर
your
में
rent
काम
from
करने
that.
के लिए, फिर कितने बजे
You go
तक
at
आप
7 a.m. in the
काम
morning to work in someone's house. Then what time do you come back? What do you do? So I come back at 1 in the afternoon. And then there is a little bit of
फिर पूरा
waste.
छांटती
So
हैं
we
आप?
sort
अच्छा,
that
हाँ।
at home. I sort
और
that
फिर
at home.
शाम को
हाँ, शाम को 4-5 बजे हम रेडी का सब्जी का रेडी लगा देते हैं।
In the evening
शाम
at
को
around
5 बजे
4 or
आप सब्जी
5
का रेडी
p.m.,
लगा देती हैं, जो आप अपने पति के साथ लगाती
हाँ,
हैं।
दोनों मिलके कभी वो कहीं
I
चले
went
जाते हैं,
vegetables with my
गाड़ी
husband.
वही मतलब गाड़ी चलाने का जब से लॉकडाउन लगा तब से गाड़ी
Even my
चलाने लगे हैं।
husband, after
तो
lockdown, has
उन्होंने
started
भी एक
driving
और
a
काम ले
vehicle.
लिया, उन्होंने भी एक
So
और
he
काम
also
ले
picked up
लिया
another work
लॉकडाउन के समय में। अच्छा,
during lockdown.
ये मैं आपसे एक और पूछना चाह रही थी कि जब
Just wanted to
लॉकडाउन
ask
के
you one
समय
more
के लिए
thing.
सहायता
So
आपको
during
मिली, हेल्प
lockdown,
मिला,
did
तो
you
वो
get
कैसे
any
मिला?
help?
आपके पास
Where did you
राशन
get
कार्ड था?
relief from?
राशन कार्ड
Did you
था?
have a ration card?
नहीं था आपके पास राशन कार्ड?
नहीं था, लेकिन
I didn't have a
सरकार
ration
द्वारा
card.
सबको पर्ची काट के दिया जाता था।
But
तो
Bal
हम
Vikas
उसको
Zara, my NGO, would
दो बार मिला, उसके
give us a
बाद हमारे घर में
slip,
बहुत तकलीफ
and
हुआ,
from
तो
that I
हमने
got
सरकार को फोन की
ration
अभी हमको घर
twice
चलाना मुश्किल हो गया, तो उन्होंने फोन
because it
करके
was very
बताया
difficult to be able to run my household.
दिया हमारे को।
तो
And so they
आपको
were able to give us some
जो
relief.
राशन मिला, जो हेल्प मिला, वो आपकी संस्था
So
जो बाल
the
विकास सहारा है,
relief that you
उनके
get,
सपोर्ट के
that
साथ
your
मिला,
organization,
उनको
Bal
आपने
Vikas Sahara,
बताया।
supported you.
और आपका ई कूपन बना फिर जब राशन कार्ड नहीं
And
था तो वो कैसे बना?
and then once you didn't have a ration card, did you get an e-coupon?
तो आपने कर लिया ऑनलाइन, कर लिया, बना लिया था या मदद लेनी पड़ी किसी की?
मदद लेनी पड़ी थी।
So yes, with the help of my organization, I was able to apply online for an e-coupon. Earlier, I didn't have a smartphone and that was needed. So you didn't have a smartphone and because of that, you were unable to do it.
और फिर बच्चों की पढ़ाई भी तो मोबाइल पे फोन पे होती है, वो कैसे होती है?
And aren't the children's education happening on mobile phones? Yeah, we didn't have it. So then we had to buy a mobile phone of 7,000 rupees. So even when you had no work or income, you had to buy a mobile phone to be able to educate your children. So yes, we had saved money. Our children had saved money in their piggy banks. So we combined all of that and then we bought the phone. Thank you so much, Jagriti Devi. I'm now going to talk to our other colleague, Praveen Bhai. Praveen Bhai, I know that you vend cold drinks outside Lotus Temple. So I wanted to ask you, so when the lockdown happened and you were not able to vend, so when did you resume work? So I have only started vending around 10 days ago. So from March till now, you were not able to vend. Yes, I wasn't able to do anything. So are you able to vend for the whole day like before?
आज के दिन तो जो खुल रही है दुकान वो 12 बजे से लेकर के
हाँ जी।
और 12 बजे से लेकर के और शाम के 6 बजे तक।
अच्छा, तो मतलब आधा टाइम, पहले कितनी देर खोलते थे आप?
मैडम जो आधा टाइम में जो खुल रही।
So we are only able to work for half the day because Lotus Temple only opens for half the day from 4 to 6 in the evening. And because there is a temple nearby, which also has some people visit. So we open our shop from 12 in the afternoon to 6 in the evening. But the bulk of my work is done in front of Lotus Temple. And I wasn't vending before this because the Lotus Temple was closed. So now because there are no tourists, so you also don't have customers, so you also don't have a lot of earning. Yes, that's right.
मतलब जहाँ पे अगर मान लो पहले 100 आदमी होता था, आज की डेट में वहाँ पे मुश्किल से 20-25 आदमी हैं।
So earlier where there would be 100 visitors to the temple, now there are barely 20 to 25. And these are just Indian tourists. There are no foreigners coming because
क्या कहा रहा है उसके अंदर भी एक
flights
दिक्कत
are
है
not coming.
क्योंकि हमारा जो काम है बेसिकली वो कोल्ड ड्रिंक का है। अब कोल्ड ड्रिंक के काम में आज की डेट में
This is also a problem for us
वो ठंडक ठंडक तो वैसे ही पड़ रही है ठंड के अंदर और वो
because
बोतल ये पानी क्या पिए?
I sell cold drinks which are cold, and during the winter the demand for my work, my so because of the weather and because of the low number of tourists, you don't have a lot of worker earnings.
अच्छा मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहूंगी प्रवीण जी कि
Okay, I wanted to ask you one more thing. There is the Swanidhi scheme, the financial relief scheme. Have you been able to register for it?
बात करा तो उनके पास डॉक्यूमेंट्स ही नहीं थे
Like we spoke to Jagriti Devi, she didn't have documents, but you had all documents. Yes, I had all the documents. I also applied. I also got a letter of recommendation from the government that the urban local body or the municipality gives, which I have gotten. And on the basis of that, I applied for the loan. So around 2.5 months ago. So you had all of the documents, you applied for the loan, but why have you not gotten the loan even now?
नहीं पता नहीं क्या गवर्नमेंट की क्या प्रक्रिया है क्या वो
I don't know what are the procedures of the government, why this is taking so much time. I have gone to the bank a couple of times and they told me that my application has come to the bank.
दूसरा उन्होंने ये बोला कि हमारे मतलब बैंक के अंदर ऑडिट चल रहा है तो ऑडिट
And then they said that the bank is going through an audit.
तो अब हमें तो बैंक में गए बैंक जो बोलेगा हमें मानना पड़ेगा
So we basically have to go by what the bank says. So we went empty-handed and came back empty-handed.
बहुत लोगों के पास तो कागज भी नहीं है आप तो लकी हैं कि आपके पास कागज है पर ये लोन आपको अभी भी मिला नहीं तो इसका फायदा डिले से जो इसका फायदा है ये जो देरी हो रही है इसका फायदा भी तो कम होता होगा अगर टाइम
So the delay in getting the loan, doesn't it also mean that the benefit that you could have gotten from the loan has reduced? So I just want to say one thing, that this loan of 10,000 rupees that we are getting, instead of this, if we would have gotten it as a cash transfer, as relief for vendors, like other sectors have gotten, for example, construction workers and farmers. So why are you saying that it should have been a cash transfer instead of a loan?
अनुदान स्वरूप होना चाहिए मेरा कहने का मतलब ये है कि अनुदान होना चाहिए था वो इसलिए कि मैडम हम जो लोग हैं वो 10,000 रुपए तो पहली बात तो 10,000 बहुत छोटी सी रकम.
So the reason I'm saying that is that first of all 10,000 is a very little sum of money. Even if you want to run our stall or buy the supplies for it, it is not enough. And if you give it in the form of a cash transfer to other sectors, we should have also been able to get it. Because for the last 10 to 12 months, we have had no work. But no one has paid us any attention. We should have gotten it as a cash transfer and not a loan, because there is interest on the loan and it will be very difficult for us to pay it back.
ओके अच्छा बस एक मिनट में मैं आपसे बस आखिरी प्रश्न पूछना
I want to ask you one last question in just 1 minute. So we know that you also contracted COVID. Are you better now? Yes, I am perfectly fine now. So where did you get your treatment from?
नहीं मैडम, प्राइवेट में मैं जा ही नहीं सकता हूँ बिल्कुल भी, और सरकारी में ही, क्योंकि प्राइवेट में इस वक्त में कोई था ही नहीं, जो दे रहे थे तो वो बहुत
Yes, so I got treatment at a government hospital because I didn't have the money to go to a private hospital.
LNJP में मैं एडमिट था।
I was admitted to a government hospital for about 22 days.
जी जी, मैं बहुत ज्यादा सीरियस हो गया था, एक्चुअली मुझे ब्रीथिंग,
My condition was very critical because I was experiencing breathing troubles.
8-9 दिन तक मेरे ऑक्सीजन हमेशा लगा रहा, मेरे मास्क ऑक्सीजन
So I
मास्क
was on the ventilator for about 10 days
हटा करके उसके बाद मैं खाता था, फिर लगा लेता था, क्योंकि मेरा ऑक्सीजन लेवल बहुत ज्यादा नीचे हो गया।
because my oxygen levels had dropped very low. So what did you think? The quality of care that was available in the government hospitals, was that good? Yes, it was very good. I faced no troubles there.
So Praveen ji, thank you आपका, और अब
Thank you so much,
मैं
Praveen ji.
आगे बढ़ूंगी, reflections from Mirai Ben to the next
Now I'm
set of
going to
speakers
move
जो
ahead
हमारे
to the
पास
next set of
हैं।
speakers.
Yes, please, sure.
Now I want to, I will be talking to our partners who partnered with us in conducting this study in Delhi. So first, Arvind. Arvind is from IGSSS. Arvind, you are here?
I'm here,
And is
Shalini.
also
Hi.
representing, yes, hi, is also representing the Delhi Roundtable of Waste Pickers. So Arvind, I want to ask you about the waste pickers in the city of Delhi. And our study shows that in Delhi, 98% of waste pickers reported that the price of recyclables had decreased since the start of the crisis. And amongst the 12 studies that we did this research in, this is the highest proportion than any other city.
Right.
You and I living in this city also know that we have a huge waste crisis, and our dump sites are competing with our with the tallest buildings in Delhi in terms of their height, with Qutub Minar. And yet the city waste management system continues to marginalize and penalize the waste pickers who are recycling and managing and segregating the waste. So I want
Right.
you to reflect a little bit about what are the threats to waste pickers in our city.
So, Shalini ji, that's actually very true. Even though there was a lot of talk on how the waste pickers are the frontline workers and they are actually leading the charge in terms of keeping our cities clean and keeping them functioning even through the lockdown. But what was very visible was that even though you have schemes and programs and good guidelines in the form of solid waste management guidelines, that did not translate into SOPs or even bare minimum, the gloves or the protective equipments that the waste pickers should have. So what we felt was that waste pickers as a category, even in informal sector work, remains in the most sort of caste hierarchy is actually operating here, and you see that waste pickers are in the most sort of margins in spite of having very good social protection policies, for instance. So that was very visible. And the other thing that we have to always keep in mind is that waste and solid waste management is connected to this whole global sort of capital. So where you have even the access of waste pickers being restricted to waste, which was clearly the case during the lockdown, of course, and that had a huge sort of chain sort of reaction where waste was not being bought. There was very less money in the market, so the returns that the waste pickers would get otherwise was far less than even the usual times. And sadly, even though we recognize that they have been the most hit, but I feel, and we all know, that the crisis has actually just begun. So this is not if the findings don't end here, it's just going to be probably more grim as this study continues, and which is what you are planning to do. So that is the sadder sort of part. one little point that I wanted to also mention was that then we also have to look at where you have said that the hunger um, impact in waste pickers was more. By the way,
Yeah.
Delhi was actually one of the better performing states. So we are talking of a state and city where the state government is actually more receptive in terms of taking innovative approaches to reach out to the most marginalized. Even then, hunger has come out as a huge challenge. That's also because of the identity of waste pickers specific to Delhi. That wouldn't be the case elsewhere, where you have a lot of them who are Muslims, who are minorities, and there is also a stigma that they carry. So even when the lockdown was getting implemented, the most hit were the waste pickers, and the way police or the administration dealt with them was far worse than what, let's say, what Jagrati Devi has just mentioned right now. So these were the immediate sort of reflection points. What we will see going forward is the other challenge of, you know, the laws and worker protection guidelines. Those are very good, but what we now are increasingly seeing in our cities is the place you work, the place you stay, how you commute, how you move about in the city, and the way whole waste management is operating is being dismantled step by step. So all the dhalaus where the waste pickers operated are being taken away. All the sorting areas that they had, informal sorting areas, that are being taken away. Housing is being standardized where informal work is not encouraged. All the state housing norms are like that. And picking and dumping of waste that you mentioned, that we are trying to just bypass this whole informal sector that exists and is actually operating for the benefit of the city. We are bypassing that, and we are just operating on this collection and dumping model, and that is the model that's being replicated across, and that is going to be a huge challenge for us as civil society organizations. And as we speak right now, we know of how wonderful examples of worker collectives, which we call as models, have been challenged, let's say in the city of Pune that we saw right now. Wonderful exemplar work models have been questioned right now, and are having to compete with private companies to manage waste, which is quite shocking. So the crisis has just begun. It's only going to get worse. How we tackle this, we'll have to think about in the coming future.
Thank you, Arvind. That was very helpful. I'll now move on to my next speaker, Aditi Ben. Aditi Ben, I'm going to talk to you about the domestic workers, and our study has shown that in Delhi, the domestic workers who reported not being able to work in the month of April. Oh, sorry, I was muted. So my apologies. I'm going to now move on to Aditi Ben. And Aditi Ben, I wanted to talk to you about domestic workers. In our study, what we see is that the domestic workers who reported not being able to work in April was very high as compared to other cities in Delhi. And also our interviews with domestic workers have revealed the stigmatization that the domestic workers face, the perception that they are vectors of disease. I want to ask you, Aditi Ben, how has SEWA tried to address this stigmatization of domestic workers, and how have you been trying to support domestic workers in Delhi?
Right. First of all, hello everybody, and sabhi ko namaste. We have been we've been working across a lot of states in India in organizing and mobilizing domestic workers. And as you rightly said, and even the study pointed out, that most of the domestic workers were not called out to work again because they were seen as carriers of the virus. So, as an effort, or as our campaign to get our workers back onto the job, SEWA has a national trade committee for domestic workers. where all of our grassroots leaders came together and wrote letters to their employers under the larger banner of the National Committee, talking to them about and requesting the employers to hire them back at work, emphasizing on the fact that they are not the carriers of the virus or the disease, and how it is important for them at this point in time, at this point of the crisis, to come back to work. And this is how the employers will be able to support the domestic workers who support the employer's household throughout. Along with that, at the city level also, we've been associated with a lot of platforms like the National Platform for Domestic Workers and other networks like Network for the Rights and Voices of Domestic Workers, where we have been trying to run advocacy campaigns directly with the government, and in order to seek some redress and some sort of relief from the government side as well. So as for example, we had a long signature campaign that was run by the network, and the signatures and the letter then was further presented to the Union Minister of Labor and Employment, so that the domestic workers are recognized as workers and their voices are further heard. Along with that, at a very also, this has to be highlighted that because Seva works in a very decentralized manner, and our grassroots leaders have played one of the most important factor in letting us know and helping us throughout the entire way. Um, so when we talk about the campaigns that were run, My Fair Home campaign, which is an advocacy campaign that has been.
So by my fair, you mean just my fair is
fair as in the just.
Yes.
Yes.
Just.
Yes.
Okay.
Just. So the My Fair Home campaign that has been running, we actually did this campaign around 16th of June. That is the International Domestic Workers Day. So that and here our members and our grassroots leaders handed out pamphlets and placards outside their employers' houses, again emphasizing that they are not the carriers of the disease and they need to come back to work. And there were cases reported that a lot of the employers were not even paying wages. So this was also seen as an attempt to reach out to the employers and have a dialogue with them in some sense, to get their wages and to get back their work. So
thank you, Aditi Ben. So I know that Seva has many many interventions running. So you've given us an essence of what you are trying to do. Thank you very much. In the interest of time and with your permission, I'll move on to the next speaker.
Yeah, you have a couple of minutes though only. We're a little running behind. So perhaps
so I'll rush. Yes, I'll rush. So okay, so Dharminder Bhai, I am going to ask you about the street vendors, and I want to ask you how much damage has e-commerce like Big Basket and Grofers done to the livelihood of vendors in Delhi, and are things returning to normal? And what are your recommendations going forward? Please keep it very sharp. We are running a little bit out of time.
Yeah, first of all, good evening, everybody. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, all. Yeah, so we all have discussed how pandemic had impact, but there are few e-commerce who have benefited out of the pandemic. When most of the street vendors were out of the street, they were able to operate and they were allowed to deliver.
There is a little bit of a problem with your
less delay.
Network.
So we all know that. Okay, I've just tried to switch to my own network.
So we'll come back to you. I just will, in the meantime,
Is it better
move
now?
to. Yes, it's better. Yes. Okay, so while we are sorting this out, I'm going to switch to my next speaker, Namita Ben, and I'm going to speak to her in Hindi. So I will proceed to the Hindi channel. Namita Ben सेवा से हैं. Namita Ben, हमने जो 4 सेक्टर्स जिनमें हमने स्टडी करा, हमने उसमें देखा कि जो होम बेस्ड वर्कर्स थे, उनकी स्थिति जो थी वो जो
For home-based workers, even once lockdown opened and recovery began, their recovery was the slowest and their situation was the worst compared to other workers. What are you seeing in the field right now? And what are your recommendations? What is Seva doing for home-based workers in Delhi? My name is Namita. I work with Seva Delhi when lockdown happened. I'll tell you about when lockdown first began in March. So our worker members did not have any work then. When we were distributing ration, a lot of the workers kept asking us for work as well. So we have a sister organization, Ruab Seva, which is comprised of home-based workers themselves. So Ruab workers reached out and were able to get a contract for mask making. So from April onwards, we started giving out a little bit of work for mask making in our areas. And from different contractors, we were also able to get work to make PPE kits. And once the economy started reopening, the work orders actually reduced because a lot of other factories also began doing mask making. And even then, so Ruab reached out and started making customized masks with embroidery and lightweight masks that are easier to wear throughout the day. And we were able to get some of those orders. So we do have work right now, but not a whole lot. So in the last week, I have gone to all of the areas where our home-based workers are working. And what I've seen is that work orders from the domestic workers, the domestic market is coming. So toy packaging, making bangles, that kind of work is coming. About that work has revived for about 60 to 70%. But all of the international work that comes from export houses, garment-related work that comes for different brands, that is barely there. And the reason for that is that a lot of the factories have only closed. So when we speak to home-based workers, they tell us that even if they want to switch from home-based work, they are facing 2 problems. If they want to go and work in a factory because there is no work at home, the factories themselves are closed, so that work is not available. And where home-based work is available, their household responsibilities have increased because children are at home. So their care work has increased. And that is also causing a problem. So the home-based workers who do want to work are not able to do anything and step out to work. And I want to say one more thing. In November, we conducted an experiment where we made a small group where we will go get some work for them from the local market here in Delhi called Sadar Bazaar. That is making decorative dry flowers. We got some of that work in November and December. but we haven't gotten it for the last 2 months because of the farmer protests. The raw material is not coming across the border, and where the raw material is available, the cost is very high. So home-based workers are not able to do that work. So even now, the recovery has actually not happened. And there have been no schemes or no relief measures for home-based workers. So we need to think about how we can get them some relief. Dharmendraji, I'm sorry, you just have 2 minutes. If you could quickly tell us what threat street vendors are facing due to e-commerce.
Of consumer base to the e-commerce companies, and this shift is something which is not going to be temporary, because we all are aware that consumer behavior is something which is of permanent nature. So we believe that if this is not reined in through policy and other measures, it will have devastating impact on the street vendors. So we have very alarming figures on India and its internet users. If I just quote some data, the mobile phone subscriber has reached to 1,170 million in 2019 in India. Likewise, the internet users number has increased from 445 million in 2017 to 665 million, and it is expected to increase further to 829 million in 2021. So with this digital penetration,
yes, any recommendations which will support?
I'm just coming on that. So with this digital penetration, we all should be well aware that with artificial intelligence and with digital intelligence, e-commerce companies will certainly going to have greater impact, a greater adverse impact on the street vendors. So we need to make sure that whatever intelligence is being created should be owned by the community, and we need policy support and other support for street vendors so that they can also use the benefit of digitalization, and they can also be given access to all digital intelligence or artificial intelligence that comes out from this shift. Thank you, Shalini ji.
Thank you, Dharmendraji. Thank you, Dharmendraji. That was very helpful. Over to you, Miraiben.
Thank you very much, Dharmendraji and all colleagues. We'll go straight now to Dr. Amit Basole of Azim Premji University, and he will be speaking to us about the road to recovery. Over to you, Dr. Amit Basole. You have about 15 minutes.
Thank you, Miraiben. Thank you, Shalini Ben, and for Viego for organizing this and for inviting me. I just wanted to check, so should I speak in English or in Hindi? What's preferred?
English is fine.
Yeah.
English is fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let me, it was very good to listen to both the findings of the survey as well as the hear directly from workers and as well as the partner organizations. So let me put what I heard today in the last hour or so in just a little bit of a perspective coming from what we have been doing at Azim Premji University. So some of you may know that I am associated with a center here at Azim Premji University called the Center for Sustainable Employment. And we have been doing some work since last April, very similar to what you have done in terms of the survey. So we had carried out our own survey in April, May, and then we did a second round in October, November. So I'll put some of this, what I've heard today, in dialogue with what we find. But then also I'd like to bring in some other kinds of work that we've been doing using the consumer pyramids household survey data of the CMIE, which is a large national data set. And I'll also say a little bit about the road ahead. So let me just summarize it broadly in these three heads. So first of all, let me say that whatever we heard today in the last hour in terms of the severity of impact of the lockdown on informal workers, the severity and the nature, I should say, what kind of impact was it, and the nature of the recovery, the slowness of the recovery that we also heard about. These findings have been by now, replicated in many surveys. So we are really developing a lot of confidence in in the broad picture that is emerging. So in our center's website, we have been gathering many of these surveys in one place so that researchers can easily look at different surveys and what they're telling us. And we have about 45, 50 surveys, I think now as of last count, of different organizations and different parts of India, different kinds of workers and so forth, and bring that together throws up a very powerful picture of a huge loss of incomes, a huge loss of employment, a huge loss of incomes, borrowing and debt, food insecurity, sale of assets, as well as impact on health and education in the near term. People not being able to bear expenses on health, people not having the capacity to continue the education for their children and so forth. So there have been these kind of broad spectrum range of effects that have happened. They find reflection in the national level data also. So the CMI findings that we have based on the employment and income surveys that they do, again, mirror that we have huge losses of employment, very large income effects. We find that the bottom 10% basically were earning zero incomes during the lockdown. And cumulatively, if you look at how much income was lost, after during the lockdown and after, then we find that the lowest 10-20% again have paid the heaviest price in terms of how much income they lost as a proportion of what they used to earn. Right? So the relative impact has been borne the most by the people who could bear it the least. That is the overall story of the cost of the pandemic so far in India. Now the question is, what can we do about it? What have we done about it, and what can we do about it? I won't spend much time on the the immediate relief measures, the Garib Kalyan Yojana and the Atmanirbhar Bharat packages. I think people broadly know the story on that. And most surveys also show, your survey also had highlighted this, that PDS was the most effective. It had the widest reach. That was the case in Delhi in your survey, but it is also the case in many other parts of the country. Followed by Manrega, which of course was not of relevance for the Delhi survey, being a city, but nationally we know that Manrega also was a very vital social safety net in the rural areas, followed by the cash transfers. The cash transfers were actually the least effective in terms of reaching people. So they reached the least number of people, especially Jan Dhan I'm talking about, because states did also undertake their own cash transfers in addition to what the center announced as part of Jan Dhan. But there isn't really very good data, as far as I'm aware of, as to how many of those state level cash transfers effectively reached people. For Jan Dhan, we do have a little bit better data. But the transfers were not very wide to begin with. And the magnitude of the transfer was also very low. So only 1,500 rupees overall, 500 rupees for 3 months is what we did, which is quite low, not only compared to what other countries have done, other similar positioned countries as ours have had much larger cash transfers, but also more importantly in relation to the incomes that were lost by people. So by our calculations in using CMI data, people lost up to 3 months of income at the bottom end, again at the bottom 10-20% of workers or households, lost up to 3 months of income, which is far more than 1,500 rupees. So the cash transfer does not really compensate people for the losses that they endured. And what we heard from the earlier testimonials when we were talking about how the Swanidhi should not have been a loan but rather should have been a grant, that is coming exactly from this perspective, that the loans really all they do at this point is add to the debt burden. People have already taken on debt to finance consumption. Offering more loans doesn't really solve the main problem, which is that household balance sheets are very highly stressed right now, by which I mean that the loans people have taken on are significant compared to what their incomes are. In our survey that we did, the follow-up of round 2 in September, October, we found that the bottom 25% of workers had borrowed something like 8 to 9 times their pre-COVID incomes just to meet consumption in these past 7-8 months. Right? So these are huge debt overhangs that are going to be with us for some time. And that is an effect of the inadequacy of the cash transfers to begin with, which is the point I was making. So what we have done so far helped avert some very severe starvation kind of situations, but it was far from adequate given the nature of the impact. Now bringing the story up to current times, the budget, which was just announced a few days back, basically took the view that the immediate livelihood crisis was over. And the focus should now be on growth, reviving growth. Hence the emphasis on capital expenditures and no mention of any additional cash transfers or NREGA spending remaining at a high level, or expansion of PDS. The Garib Kalyan Yojana expired at the end of November. NREGA additional outlay expires at the end of this financial year. Cash transfers, of course, were expired long back. So none of these measures found their way in the budget, which makes us think that the government is largely thinking that the immediacy of the crisis is over and the focus should now be on revival. We don't think that the crisis is over, and I think what we've heard today very clearly shows that the crisis is not over in any immediate sense. So there is still a lot of room and need to do more. What can that be? And now, of course, that the budget is done. I have no idea when the government might do any of this, but we'll just sort of outlay what we think should be done, regardless of the likelihood of it being implemented. First of all, another round of cash transfers, it's still not too late for that. We should do it. Other countries have carried out bigger ones, as I said before, and our impact on informal workers has been far more severe than what we have done. So we should do more cash transfers. They don't reach a lot of people. So there is a problem. There is not enough digital infrastructure in place to actually make sure that cash transfers will reach everybody who needs them. But with that caveat, we should still do whatever we can. NREGA spending should definitely not be going back to 73,000 crores, which is what was announced in the current budget. It should be at least 1 lakh crores, which is the current expanded budget, if not more, given how much unmet demand there is out there. PDS, again, was a vital lifeline. I think there's a strong case to be made for universalizing it. One nation, one ration card doesn't address that issue. It only addresses the portability issue, which is a serious issue. So portability should be addressed, but the expanded benefits are crucial right now. So universalizing it and ensuring some more food subsidies going in for a few more months is also worth thinking about. Right? We have argued strongly that there should be a urban employment guarantee program as well. And some state governments have tried to do something like that in the last year. Jharkhand announced one such program, Odisha announced a program, Himachal announced a program, Kerala already had one program going in the urban areas. I won't go into the details because there's no time, but we think that some kind of a public works program that creates employment in cities that achieves two functions: solves the underemployment crisis that informal workers are still facing. As we heard today also, work is not back to where it was. So provides employment for informal workers and creates urban assets, which are very important for urban quality of life and reviving growth. So that would be a new program. It is not an extension of an older program, a new national program, and we think that that makes a lot of sense right now to do. These are the sort of immediate things that come to mind that definitely should be done in the next few months to address the crisis. Otherwise, we are looking at a very long-term depressed economy because people don't have the money to spend. Now, the last point I will make is when we suggest a lot of these programs, like cash transfers, expanded Manrega, all of these things, that cost money. Right? So all the things that I listed could easily come to maybe 1 to 2 lakh crore rupees of extra government spending. Do we have the money to spend? Since there has been all this talk of expanded fiscal deficit and we can't afford it and so forth. Here, I think we are looking at the problem the wrong way. The correct way to look at this is, if we spend money now, then we address a livelihoods crisis. We put money in people's pocket. We spur spending. We revive growth from the bottom up where it matters. That creates the tax revenues necessary to later on address the fiscal deficit. If we approach it from the fiscal deficit end, then the conclusion we come to is we can't spend anymore. We don't spend. We don't revive demand. We can do capital expenditure, which the government has done, but that takes many years to kick in fully. This kind of spending has a much shorter incubation period. So doing this revives the economy much faster than relying purely on capital expenditure, which the government has chosen to do. So I would say that we have the money to do this. And what I mean when I say we have the money is that spending now creates the taxes in the future. It's not taxes that create spending now. So I'll stop here. I've already, I think, gone over my time, but I'm happy to address anything in the Q&A as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Basole, and you have in fact stuck very much to the time, and I'm happy to pick up where you left off. I would like to first, in my concluding remarks, thank all the colleagues on the panel and yourself, Dr. Basole, and of course the organizers, WeGo. I want to go straight across to one of the questions that was put to me in the chat, which is on the whole issue of care work and specifically childcare. I think one of the important things that has come out of this WeGo Focal Cities Delhi study is the huge increase in care work, the burden of care work, particularly on women. So in addition to the devastation of their livelihoods, as we've been hearing all evening, we now have additional work responsibilities. And as we heard from Namita Bhen, with children still at home, and particularly young children, all the ICDS Anganwadis or childcare centers shut down. And in many states, I'm not sure about Delhi, they're yet to open. This has been a huge issue, particularly for informal women workers. If I speak of our own experience of Seva, of course, in Ahmedabad, where we run creches, full-day creches for informal workers' children. The women, in fact, both parents have been pressurizing us for months to please open up the creches, even if the government ones aren't open up, because the women say we can't go back to work. We simply cannot work if these basic support services are not available. So first of all, they need full-day creches, come childcare centers for the under 6-year-olds. Then they need some support for the older children because they have had to help with the schoolwork, tutoring, and so on. Then there's, of course, as we've heard, elderly care and care of the sick. And in addition to our study, WeGo Focal Cities study, other colleagues who have done similar studies in Delhi and elsewhere have come up with some data which shows that there's been about a 66% increase in care work among informal women workers across all sectors. So this is a great matter of concern, and we are not enabling women in particular to get back into the workforce, earn, and again, recover and rebuild their lives and livelihoods. I'd like to end up with, one more point before I end up with a few recommendations, while totally supporting with what Dr. Basole said, is that we also saw during this time, and this has come out in the study, the collapse of social security networks where they existed, or the exposure of the huge gaps. One I have already mentioned, which is the absence of childcare, but there's others: insurance, basic health care. I was happy to hear Praveen Kumarji say that he got good quality care in New Delhi, but I'm afraid it is not such a rosy picture in the rest of the country, urban and rural. I mean, it's a mixed picture. So these are some of the things that still I think we need to think about in the recovery process. Going straight to my recommendations, first and foremost, I think that the government has to think of investing in livelihoods rather than expenditure. This is an investment. It's an investment in recovery. It's an investment in people's lives, in the people who more than 50% contribute to India's GDP. Surely they have a right to some basic increased investments. And one of the investments we would, and we have been strongly advocating for at SEWA, and also WeGo, is a livelihood recovery fund, which would provide work and income either through soft loans, or, as we've heard, many cannot take loans for obvious reasons. So a cash transfer, like say 10,000 rupees per micro entrepreneur, so that at least they can get their raw materials and start slowly building up their livelihoods. We've also seen that when there is working capital available to workers' collectives like cooperatives, like farmer producer organizations, they are able to rebuild. Sorry about that. We had a small experience in SEWA where some of our cooperatives, we were able to help them raise working capital. And we found that then in the lockdown period, about 70% of the members of the cooperatives were able to actually get work and income. So a livelihood recovery fund is the need of the hour, a large fund, and the Indian government is perfectly capable of also getting funds from external donors. I absolutely endorse what was said about food security and food being continuous, that should continue, the PDS and free food. It's absurd that we have such huge stockpiles of food grains and we still have persistent hunger. We have seen in our creches that during the lockdown, children's weight has gone down. And it's a matter of great concern to the parents. There just simply wasn't enough food. In our surveys, some of the families said that, a couple of times a week they went hungry. They didn't have money to have food to eat. The third important point I'd like to make is social protection. It has been a demand of many of the unions and cooperatives of informal workers, including my own SEWA. And I think it's high time now that we extend social protection to all informal workers, including at least full-day childcare, so women and men can go back to work full-time and earn. Second, protective insurance. Very few have had insurance during this COVID period, and 40% of the population is covered with the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, our central health insurance, for those who may not know. But it does not cover on informal workers. So that should be one of our demands as unions and cooperatives of informal workers. And then, of course, investing now heavily in our public health system. The budget there is a greater outlay, but we're not sure where exactly that outlay is going. It should be for primary healthcare at the very doorstep of informal workers. So this is high time now to raise the demand for universal social protection. It's not a new demand, but it takes on a renewed urgency in light of COVID. Two more quick points. One is that the experience has shown that workers are not just the recipients or passive sort of victims. They have been actively involved in the recovery process in fighting COVID. They have been the COVID warriors at the grassroots level. So that process should continue. And finally, the big learning for all of us who organize workers is that The workers who managed to stay afloat or survive did so because they had the support of their unions and cooperatives. So the importance of further deepening our organizing efforts and building collectives, and I know there are many in Delhi, but we need to have many more, particularly of migrant workers and others who are more difficult to organize because they come and go. So these are some of the points, Shalini Bhen and friends and colleagues, that I feel that as a collective, as a joint group, we should be advocating for with the Delhi government, with our state governments, and of course, with the national government. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Shalini Bhen for any last comments and suggestions.
Sorry, Shalini,
Thank
can I
you,
just take a minute?
Miraben. Sure.
I wanted to just, one thing. Arunji had asked about these other studies, and I've just posted a link in the chat, which is the database that we are maintaining on the various surveys. So I would ask people to go there, and we'll also, of course, add yours as well soon to that. That's one thing. The other is I'm very remiss in actually not mentioning something very important that has kept coming out of our research, is that women have paid a huge price for this in every way. So I really should have, forgive me for not mentioning this very obvious point, also given the context, both in terms of likelihood of losing work, the likelihood of getting back to work being lower than men. So, they were more likely to lose, less likely to come back. There was a burden of childcare. So in every way, this crisis has been a hugely gendered crisis. And in fact, we find those effects to be much stronger than caste or the type of work that you do. Many of these other things that we also know matter, which they do matter, but the gender effect by and large swamps all other effects. So I wanted to really, forgive me for not mentioning that earlier. I just wanted to add that.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you,
Dr. Basole. And there's a quick question here about community-run childcare models. Arun Kumarji, be happy to share with you offline. There are many models. Our own model is a cooperative model, but right here in your city of Delhi, there is a mobile creche and many others. So we can talk about that later, and happy to share with you. Over to you, Shalini.
Thank you. Thank you, Miraben. Thank you very much. We are doing relatively okay on time. And thank you, I think, to the last two speakers who really stuck to time. Or before that, we were stretching ourselves a little more than we were permitted to. But so I'm ready to take two questions, 2 or 3 questions. So Akriti, I see, has raised her hand. Akriti, and then Smita, 2 people. Quick questions, and please tell us who you are directing that question at, and I'd request the respondents to also respond very quickly. 2 questions and then answers after that.
Thank you, Shalini ji, and everyone for this very, very important study. My question is about 3 things that I would like to know if any data or any anecdotes were found. One is to do with increased numbers of retrenchments and layoffs that took place, so leading to much higher levels of informalization. Do we know how did the informal sector absorb some of those who lost their jobs? The second one being very unfavorable labor laws, also as the point about creches was raised. The new wage code and all actually does away with a lot of provisions that had been fought for, and it had implications on informal women workers as well. And the third one is to do with the COVID crisis being also the migrant workers crisis in a big way. So what do we know in terms of the data on reverse migration and others? And some reports also showed that there was migration back to the cities, and then again people went back. So if Amit ji could reflect on some of these, because since he's also been tapping many other studies, so if there's data on that, again from a gender lens, these were also some concerns that came to my mind. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Akriti. We'll take a question from Smita and then Sonal. I know you are waiting. So first two questions, their responses, and then Sonal. So Smita, if you could put across your question.
Thanks so much, Sharli, for this opportunity. Just for the audience sake, I'm Smita and I work with ActionAid on issues of informal workers. And my question is to Professor Bhosle, and this is less related to data, more related to conceptual, thinking around the urban employment, program which is being discussed. So while there is this kind of common understanding that the program needs to revolve around public works, and is there any thought around how are we looking at women participation in this process? Because a lot of women are a part of slums and resettlement areas. So is there any thinking particularly for them? We know that, a lot of domestic workers have lost their jobs, have not gained back their employment, and different state governments are thinking differently and stuff. Now with this codes coming in, one challenge, now this is more to, maybe Miraiben can respond or somebody else, Aditi can take this up, is with respect to the question which is coming back to us is how to give social security. What can be the mechanisms for providing social security or a safety net in terms of funding support readily available with states? Because most state governments with whom collectives we are working are coming back asking us, आप suggestions दीजिए कि कैसे हम वो social security meet करें, because in the labor codes there is no such provision for meeting that security grant per se. And the third thing which is related to garment workers. So I understand there was a lot of talk about the sector being dull, and what we know of is that at least in Delhi NCR, the export houses are not looking at a resumption of full work before December or even later in 2021. In this given scenario, the creche facility which was being given in factories and some, at least the good export houses, everything has been withdrawn because of COVID, and a lot of women in the reproductive age group are not able to join back work. So is there some thinking going on organizing these collectives or some kind of advocacy measures being thought of? Yeah, so these three questions, Shalini.
Yes, thank you, Smita. I'll ask Professor Basole to respond first, and then Miraiben some thoughts.
I'll be very brief. So on the reverse migration question, unfortunately, the data is simply not there in terms of putting together a national picture on what happened, both in terms of the initial volume back and then how have people come back as well. So, anecdotally, we know that it was stretched out over many months, even the return. Even now, there are many people who haven't come back to work and so forth. So it's a complex picture, region-wise it varies and so forth. And unfortunately, there is no data. The government has announced a few things now going forward, a database and so forth. So maybe something will happen. But I fear that we have lost a lot of months of there's a blackout in terms of what actually happened. There was a question, I think the first one, on how did the informal economy absorb workers. See, what we find over and over again in our work as well, and I think this would came out today as well, in today's seminar also, when we were talking about the shift from waste picking, for example, to selling vegetables. So what we saw in the national level data also is a huge shift to self-employment from all kinds of work. Whatever you were doing earlier, you may have been a casual worker, a regular salaried worker, you move to self-employment in trade, in petty trade, and in agriculture. So this is what generally happens. These are the fallback sectors that people fall back to doing some petty trading somewhere or go home and work in agriculture. This is what happened now too. The informal economy basically just expands to accommodate these workers. So, there's no unemployment to speak of here. Basically, whatever number of workers are coming in, the work gets shared among them, the income gets shared among them. What that means is that per household or per person income falls. So if you imagine many more people are selling vegetables, what that means is that the existing vegetable sellers' incomes have fallen. Everybody is sharing in the same stock of demand, because it's not like people are buying more vegetables. And that has happened. It's continuing to happen to some extent. Even there, let me give you a small anecdote which really illustrates the real constraints that people face. I was talking to a person who was a cook, whose husband was a school driver. School driver lost work in April, never got it back. So tried driving tempo, vegetable wholesale driving and so forth. She was saying to me, he doesn't want to sell vegetables because everybody knows us in the neighborhood and he doesn't feel like that's his station in life. He doesn't want to be seen selling vegetables. It was a really, the kind of moment that makes you feel what are the constraints that people face, and these are very real ones, right? So not all options are even available to everybody. And again, the women's story here is very important, that the fallback story is really a male story. What women have done is simply exit. So a lot of women who are working are just not working anymore. It's not like they're doing anything else, because those options are also not often available to them. Lastly, on the urban employment and women question, I'll just point you very briefly to a brief that came out on precisely this issue from this organization IWAGE, AGE. Just earlier this month or last month, they brought out a brief on how can an urban employment guarantee program be made gender sensitive. That's the whole topic of the brief. So if you Google it along with IWAGE, I think you'll find it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Basole. Yes.
Yeah,
Mirai.
sorry, just I'm conscious of time. Very quickly, the question on how to provide social security, social protection, it's a huge topic. I couldn't possibly do justice to it in 2 minutes or 1 minute. But first and foremost, a long-standing demand of unions of informal workers and cooperatives has been identity cards. Some states have done this quite successfully. I'm not so sure about Delhi, although I know in Delhi, Construction Worker Board has been trying to register workers. So I think once workers have a name and a face, then we can begin to figure out how to reach at least basic protective health insurance to them, and scholarships and so on, which would help children to go back to school. I think another thing that some of us are working on is universal health care. There is a small window of opportunity because health has been prioritized, but we want to see what has been prioritized. We believe primary health care should be prioritized in the direction of universal health care, including occupational health for workers. And the third way is universal child care. I think what's really important is the mechanism, and we don't have time to discuss that in detail, but there have been a lot of discussions with unions and cooperatives who have proactively said that they are willing to help in the identification of workers so that you can begin to make sure that the benefits reach. All of us know, and this study is also brought out clearly, that if workers don't have an organization standing with them, it's very difficult for them to navigate the system and actually get the social security benefits. So here's where the importance, again, of collectives, collectivization, union, and cooperatives come into the fore. I'm sorry, this is a short answer to a very big question. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Miraiben. Thank you very much. That was very helpful. So I've got two more people asking questions. You have 30 seconds each to ask a question. You will get an answer in 30 seconds each. So if you're ready to take that opportunity, first Sonal and then Jaya. Sonal. Sonal.
I think Sonal has dropped off, Shalini. I don't
Oh,
see her.
okay. Jaya, do you
Perhaps
want to
Jaya.
go ahead and ask? Perhaps she'll join back. Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you
Yes.
so much. Thank you so much, Shalini. This was really a very informative and interesting discussion. Thanks for that. My question is about the indebtedness that all the studies so far and even your study has highlighted. And as Dr. Basole rightly said, that this is going to stay with us for a long time. what I have captured from different reports that have come out, and even our discussions, Jagori's discussions with some of the domestic workers, is that no state machinery, I mean, some bank facilities available for these workers to seek loans. It's generally the private players, the private money lenders. Maybe it could be their landlords or someone in the locality. So the interest rates are very high, and if this is going to continue for a long period, because they are taking loans to serve another loan, which they have taken earlier. So in this case, what could be our recommendation? What kind of, apart from cash transfers, I totally agree, and that was a very important suggestion that Dr. Basole made, but I am not sure what volume cash transferred will this government agree for, because they can very easily write off loans of big corporates. But when it comes to these women particularly, there will be stinginess. So in absence of a big cash transfer, what other mechanism for easy and fair kind of interest rate loans can we suggest? That is my question.
Professor Basole, you want to take that?
Yeah, very quickly, let me say, so I actually think that loans is not the way to go right now, just for the reasons that you said. Now, bringing together what Miraiben said about investments and how do you target help to those who need help, I strongly think that creating work is much better solution to a lot of these things. You are creating work that will attract people who need the work, who need the money, so you don't have to target anything. You pay them to do the work and you get some actual constructive assets in return, which is what we have learned from Narega's experience. And that's why we have been pushing the urban employment idea so strongly, that it does not have targeting problems. You spend money investing in assets rather than just spend money. You solve the demand problem. So all of these things can be done through that. Now I realize, of course, that not everybody can turn up for a public employment program. So it's not, we are not suggesting that as a panacea for everything, but if you design it properly, you can even have a scheme which utilizes people's skills, existing skills, and in a public effort, right? So you don't have to think of it as just digging earth or some kind of very simple kind of casual labor. You can think more creatively about it and have a wider shelf of works. In fact, interestingly, just one last point I'll make, because it's the government's own parliamentary committee on labor under Bhartwari Mahtab, the JDU MP, they've come out with a very interesting report saying that Narega was critical in this time. Please expand it. Please expand the kind of works permitted under it. And this is the government's committee. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from here for urban areas also.
Thank you, Dr. Basole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I have to close the session now. And I just very briefly, I want to thank everybody who participated in this session. I really want to thank Jagriti and Praveen. जागृति जी एंड प्रवीण जी, आपका खास धन्यवाद कि आप इस इतने मुश्किल समय में भी आप टाइम निकाल बात करने के लिए. Excellent sharing and such good insightful remarks. Professor Basole, one phone call and you were here helping us round up and bring it all. Thank you very, very much. And I'm really grateful to our partners, the three and Jantel for not just their partnership in conducting the study, but also their insightful remarks today. Thank you very much for the audience from all over the world who joined us, and good night and good evening to everybody.